What's happening, world? This is your host, the Wizard of Oz, Benji Wozniak, back with Kyra. And today we're going to do the most dangerous movie ever made, Roar. Kyra?
All right. So my history with this movie is I had never heard about it. And then Ben told me about it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. We'll see what's kind of going on. And then it was a movie.
Yep.
I'm going to have Ben lead because I don't have a lot of nice things to say about it, but it was a movie.
So my wife recommended this movie because it is the most dangerous movie ever made. 70 people were injured. The lions were actually let to do whatever they wanted. They hurt people, and there were lions being lions. The movie itself, terrible.
Okay, this is the thing about the movie. Before we get into like all the drama of the movie, there was legitimately no plot. Also, if your family's coming to visit you, like, wouldn't you just, first of all, be there to pick them up, not go there like 4 hours later when they're getting mauled in your home, or just be like, I'll stay at the house. You guys come to me. So they're not like, oh, why is this house infested with lions and tigers? It made no sense. Okay, one more thing I got to get off my chest before we get too into it. Tonally, this movie is insane. What kind of movie is it? Is it a movie about how we shouldn't be shooting wild animals in Africa? Probably. A lot of the mauling scenes and the tiger scenes are shot like a horror movie. There's minimal dialogue. You just hear growling and you see real blood.
It is real blood. People were really mauled in this movie. This is not like fake blood. People were hurt.
People were hurt. We were talking a little bit off screen about it. Melanie Griffith lost her eye. Almost.
She just got her face slit open.
It just slid open. But it was near her eye.
Yeah.
I'm going to be dramatic about it. But okay, so let's talk about the plot first. There is none. I've already told you about it. And then at the end of the movie, they're just all living happily ever after. It makes no sense. So for the first, I'll say 80 minutes of the film, it is just chaos and panic surrounding this family in this home, right? And then for the last 10 minutes when the dad's there, they're all chilling, having a great time, sleeping in bed with them, swimming in the lake with them, having their morning coffee. And it's like, when did this switch happen? Because you guys were all fighting for your lives 5 minutes ago.
So what happens is, in real life, Noel Marshall and Tipi Hedren were married. They had gone to Africa.
Because she was filming.
Yeah. And when they were in Africa, they saw a Game Wardens house that had been overrun by a pride of lions. And it intrigued them. They thought it was very interesting. So they got this idea to make a movie. They were like, oh, we can make a movie. So when they went home, they decided to buy lion cubs and raise them in their home with their children. Now, they did this, and in the process, they started trying to get backers for a movie about this conservationist who lives alone with lions, whose family comes unexpectedly or expectedly, and there's a mishap where he leaves to get them, and they show up on the thing, and they leave them with the lions. That's basically what happened. It was insane. The man put so many people in danger, it was ridiculous. He imported 150 lions, tigers, panthers, cougars, elephants, all kinds of big cats to California because they couldn't film in Africa. So this all happened in California. Like, he built the set. The lions were let to roam free, and the film people that he hired, many of them were just people off the street that didn't know how to film. They were just random people that they brought in. Can you do this job? And they're like, sure, but they really never had any kind of training to do the job, but they just wanted the money. So, like, they got these inexperienced people dealing with real big cats, and a lot of people got hurt.
Like 70 people got hurt.
Yeah, mauled.
And so I think what was the most disconcerting part for me is you're watching the movie, right? And then the main guy, Noel, whatever, he is like play fighting with like, I love how they all have like really like innocuous names like Robbie. This is my tiger, Robbie. I was like, Jesus Christ. But so he's like playing with him, and like you see that his hand gets bit.
Yes.
And then he just starts like free bleeding all over the tigers and like all over the place. And then he's like ripping up shirts for like a bandit. And I like, this is real blood. Yes. It was like, I was infected. Like, yeah, it got infected. This movie was so crazy. So I was doing a little reading about it. It took 11 years to produce after. They had to release it internationally first. And then they had to release it in America. Really crazy. They made no money off of it. Smash. The only place I think it did well was like Japan. What threw me about the movie, knowing all this backstory before we started watching it, was that there is a title screen. There's a title card that says no animals were hurt in the making of this movie. Doesn't talk about all the countless people that were hurt, though. Yeah. It just says no animals were harmed in the making. We're affiliated with the Humane Society. Yeah. Legitimately, it says that.
Well, as long as the animals are protected. I'm glad. As long as... Well, and then unions came out.
And then...
See, the whole thing is, like, it says no animals hurt during the filming of this, and that's technically not true.
Nope, because a tiger was shot by a cop.
Yeah, there was a flood, and they were in a basin, and it basically washed away the set and all the film that they had made. So the lions got free, and Robbie was one of them, and then 3 lionesses. And Robbie would roar at people. He wasn't harmful. He was just like very assertive, and the cops didn't know this, so they killed Robbie. And he was one of the most tamest lions. And then the 3 lionesses got swept downstream to a town. So like here you have these townspeople, and they don't know, and all of a sudden these lions come out, so they killed them. So the animals were hurt during the filming of this thing. It's not on set.
So I think this movie is really funny. I mean, granted, it did like put Melanie Griffin on the map, which is kind of crazy. Like, it's just like, what? This film? Because it is. So I did not understand. Like, I obviously understood. I have media literacy. I understood the film. But I also, at the same point, had no idea what was going on at any point in time. So there's this one scene where these game fighters, there had to be a big bad, right? So the big bad is like these game fighter hunters that came in, tigers, just like flips their boat. Like he's like swimming in the lake and just like flips the boat. So now these fighters are like, these like hunters are mad, and they're like, we're going to come back and we're going to storm the house and we're going to kill all these animals because I'm wet. Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they got mauled. Like,
I know they got mauled, but it was just for the plot. It didn't make any sense.
It was.
I am a little moist.
Yeah, it was.
Then take a nap. And then fires the missile.
Yeah, it was. The plot is terrible. I mean, the movie itself is just awful. Like, I sat through it painfully, but
it's only an hour and a half, and it felt like 3 hours.
Yeah, but knowing, like, watching the documentary and then knowing what really happened, and knowing that when this stuff's going on, these people are really getting hurt. Like, there's one part where Noel Marshall's on the staircase talking to his friend. The lions are acting up and they're out fighting, and then he's trying to calm them down, and he's like, stop it, you know, and he's yelling at the lions, and all of a sudden, but a real lion, like, went up and grabbed the back of his leg and ripped him down the staircase, and, like, this guy ended up getting infected twice, being in the hospital, leaving the hospital to come to the set because of the flood, trying to find out how many people died. This guy was a lunatic for this movie. I mean, he was just insane, like, running into herds of lions, like, going, screaming at him, and I'm like, that's a lion.
That's a lion.
That's a lion. It's not a kitty cat. All right, I might do that with my cat, even though she's a Maine Coon. She's big. She's not a lion.
And I think if you want to show a movie about how hunting big game is awful, it is a horrible act, and how we should be conserving these like spaces in Africa, and how we should be like conserving this wildlife. I think to have a movie where like you want to incorporate like wild animals, you have to do it with care, because it's just showing how dangerous these animals are. Because if you're putting them in these situations where they're not comfortable, they're going to attack, because what do they know? They don't understand what's happening.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. They are primal creatures. So I think it's kind of the film kind of contradicts itself.
Yeah. And not to mention, he took take after take, knowing that it was a dangerous take, antagonizing the lions, and if you keep on poking the bear, eventually the bear is going to bite you, and that's what happened. Like, he kept on doing these like retake, and like the lions don't. There's one part in the documentary, someone's getting bit, and he's like, cut, and I'm like, the lion don't know what cut means.
I'm cutting. But it's like, it's so true. And then like, I don't know, there's one scene, I forget the main, it's not Robbie, maybe it's like Tobias, I don't know, they all had stupid names. Toto, I don't know, it began with a T. Tomius, I don't know. So there's one scene where he is just walking around covered in blood, and I'm like, Tonga, thank you. See? Tonga.
That's what I'm here for, people. Sidekick.
He's like covered in blood though, and it's like just like chilling, walking around this compound with blood. I'm assuming because he attacked someone and they couldn't wash it off.
The scariest part I thought was when they're eating the zebra, when the family's in the house, and they drag the zebra carcass into the house. And now the family they're actually filming live while these lions are eating zebra.
Live.
And there's blood going everywhere. And like, I don't know if this guy was aware of like the frenzy that a lion would have over blood. And then you put your family in this house locked in there with these ravenous lions that are tearing apart a carcass. No
way.
No, not gonna happen.
It is, and I think it just goes to show, like, when you don't understand, because this was the first movie he made.
Yeah.
When you don't understand,
no, it's the second. He made The Exorcist. He made a lot of money off The Exorcist, and that's why he ended up funding.
Right, but he didn't direct The Exorcist.
No, he just funded it. Like,
yeah, he was a producer on it. But being a producer and being a director is two different things. I think you have to create realism in a film, especially when you're dealing with big cats. You can't have actual realism. Yeah. And I think that was lost in translation.
Yeah. And Tipi Hedren, she was the star of The Birds.
I felt like this movie would have re-traumatized me if I filmed The Birds and then I filmed this.
Yeah, and there's all indications that she did have some kind of trauma from The Birds.
Oh, she did. Yeah. She also outwardly speaks about how she was sexually harassed by Alfred Hitchcock. So she has like a lot. He is not a good guy, I'm sorry to say. But so if we look at Tipi Hedren, so she did have all this trauma from working with him, filming The Birds, being like attacked by these birds, and then you're going to throw her in the same situation with lions. Yeah. Homegirl hates animals, I think.
Well, she became an animal conservationist.
No, I know she did. And that's the thing, like, the message of this movie is important. We should not be going overseas and hunting these big games. You shouldn't. You're ruining the ecosystem, you're ruining wildlife, and you're harming nature. So with that being said, this movie does not make me want to conserve wildlife at all. No. It makes me want to stay far away from it.
I think what's interesting about this, right? So it totally bombed at the box office. How many documentaries though have we had now with like the guy who sleeps with wolves, the other dude with the damn bears or whatever, and then Jane Goodall did the gorillas, and that was actually like super cute.
Yeah, she got killed by poachers. She was actually a really good person that like actually helped the gorillas. If it wasn't for the poachers killing her, like, you know, she'd probably still be.
What would you think could have been done differently to this movie that would have made it more stomachable and better at, you know, with the audiences nowadays? Because I feel like even now this movie just sounds so ridiculous that a lot more people would see it nowadays than they would have before. Granted, it probably would have to be on like a streaming service.
Right. We had to watch this movie on YouTube. It was not available to stream anywhere. It's kind of buried. Yeah. I would say if you're going to make a movie like this, let's get one thing. Let's get a screenwriter who gives us a plot.
Right.
I need a plot for the story. Number one, let's get an actual conservation and actual animal trainers and actual people who work with wildlife and on the set. Let's create a safe set. Let's do some training. Let's do some exercises. Let's understand. And maybe let's not, if someone's bleeding, maybe not continue to film. I don't know. Maybe shut it down.
Right.
And I think it's so crazy because when you look at a movie like this that was made in 1981, really before a lot of like set safety was involved, you had things that happened like this. But like now look at, I don't want this to come up like I'm supporting them, but Alec Baldwin is going to trial because he fired a gun that on set that killed someone. And it was a prop gun. So I think nowadays there are so many things that are in place to help protect people that work on film.
Yeah.
And it was just not there. And I think this movie is so irresponsible.
Yeah. So the guy who trained the elephants actually worked with animals. And there's a scene with a director who ends up being the director of Die Hard. He ends up becoming a famous director. But there's a scene where he puts a top over himself and his co-filmer, and they're under this tarp, and they're filming the boat scene. And the guy tells him, he said, look, you're getting the lions run over you. Eventually, they're going to want to know what's under the tarp. You're going to move, and you're going to make a sudden movement, and the lion's going to be curious. And he's like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Shut up. So they kept on refilming the same scene over and over. And eventually, he moved. And the lioness saw him move and was curious, so she swiped at the top
camera,
and scalped him. They scalped this man. And literally scalped him. If you look at the picture, he has the back of his head is missing. And he ended up going to the hospital. But the crazy thing is, he came back to refilm.
He did, which is crazy.
No! You got scalped. Listen, you don't go back. listen, it's like an ex. You don't go back.
You don't go back. And I think it just is really insane because it shows like, I think when you're so passionate about a project and you really like want this movie to get made, you'll blind yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was happening. I mean, Melanie Griffin says her and Noel made this movie together. It took them 11 years and then it ended their marriage. Like, this is all consuming. Yeah. I think that shows because when you descend to a level of like consumption and madness, you're just focused on finishing this project.
Yeah.
And I think safety goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, there's rumors, I don't know how true it is, but there's rumors that, so Melanie Griffith was Noel
Marshall.
Noel Marshall. It was his stepdaughter. And like, supposedly he continually put her in situations where she could get hurt. I guess, I don't know how true this is. It was speculation, but I guess that kind of also tipped Tipi Hedren to want to leave him because she felt that he endangered Melanie Griffith on purpose.
I mean, that one scene where she's literally crying on the floor, getting mauled.
She got mauled.
and then she like gets up and hugs her mom. I was like, yeah, I'd be like, get me the F out of here.
Right? Right?
And then the next scene, Noel shows up, everyone's happy-go-lucky, and then they're drinking tea.
Yeah.
What? How did we get here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just envisioning right now the director being like, I love that you're screaming, but I think we need more cowbell. Can we just, I think we need more cowbell.
And it literally felt like that, Adam. Like, no word of a lie.
Oh, it's so bad. It's such a bad movie. But you know what's funny? And it says in the documentary, if you watch the actors, they look like they're being held hostage on this film.
Oh my God, they do.
And you can see the terror in their faces. The guy who's supposed to be his buddy is literally, there's scenes where you can see that he's actually terrified. Like, scared to death to be in the room with these wild cats. And he makes a couple of comments where, I mean, it was real comments he was really making, but they kept it in the movie to make it like, shocking value. But he's like, they're probably eating your family.
Yeah, like they're eating your family right now. Right? And we're out here.
Yeah, and he's like, stop it. But I guess he was really telling him that. He was like, look, there's a good chance that your family's being eaten by these cats. And, Marshall was like, didn't want to hear it. He just wanted the film to continue.
Can you imagine I read, and I real quickly, just a moment ago, did this seriously take around like 11 years to make?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To produce. So they actually. So did they?
So they filmed it, and then through getting funding to edit, cut, produce, distribute, that all took 11 years. The filming did not take 11 years.
I was gonna say, I was like, can you imagine just like almost getting mauled and coming back like
no,
like 4 or 5 years later, like, oh, I got to do this again, but I'm still messed up from last time.
No, they sold their house, they sold everything. Like, they lost money on this film, and then it was archived, and then someone else came across it and was like, oh, let's put this out there, because they felt that, since it was made and since the fact it was called the most dangerous movie ever made, they felt that it should be put out.
I'm just going to call it the worst movie ever made.
The reason why we have laws.
Yeah.
Humane issues. It's
just what's so tough and what I think is so funny is that you make this movie, it's a movie about Africa, you're making it exclusively in America, and then when you finally release it, you have to release it internationally because you can't get it back in America. I think is so funny. It's like no one wanted this movie besides Melanie Griffith and Noel Marshall. And
Tipi Hedren.
Oh yeah.
So I think like they do special shout outs at the beginning to what? Tanzania?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, because like I think that's where they get like their like. Remember how in a previous episode we were talking about setting shots?
Yes.
So you have to get these setting shots, and that's where it was. But I mean, we were speaking about like all these like I don't know, just like wild cats being in this environment of just being untamed.
Yeah, I will say that the beginning of the movie, the music.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Like, and the scenery, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. I'm like, I was so disappointed.
But the fact that like they have minimal dialogue and then they just have like this very, like you said, like happy, almost comedic sounding music over these atrocious maulings is tonally so crazy.
Yes. Yeah, it is crazy. And I just can't believe 70 people got mauled. And like, and they came back. I don't get it.
I don't get it. I would not come back.
Yeah. Especially seeing the chaos. Like, if you watch the movie, they showed like the lions, the tigers, and the pumas and the cougars destroying the house. They really did that.
They really did.
Yeah.
They also really rode a skateboard. I just watched it.
Yeah.
Super cute, guys.
Gary.
You need to see.
Gary.
You need to see it.
Yeah.
The re-release
Gary.
trailer. Oh, for the record, though, on YouTube, the re-release trailer, which is in like 2015, has almost 1 million views.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Like there's interest there.
There's interest.
It's a skateboard.
maybe we should have just watched the re-release trailer and then nothing else.
So
maybe we would have liked the movie.
So there's an interesting thing because that's little Gary. Gary is the son of the main cat, Robbie. There's a scene where his hand is bitten and he goes in and he's talking to Gary, and Gary's like, basically, Gary gets a taste of the blood on his hand and he's trying to rip the wrappings off him, and he's playing with it. Like, he's like, oh, Gary, you're joking around. And Gary wasn't joking around.
Gary was not joking around. It was actually horrifying to watch because I thought his hand was going to get bitten off.
Yeah. Yeah, because little Gary he's a lion.
He's a lion.
He tasted your blood.
I was shocked when I started watching it.
Yeah.
Just to think that, like, I don't know. I think it just shows like the madness that goes into a project.
Yeah.
And how that can like really derail and become unsafe. And I think we hear a lot about how directors create this kind of like, and I know we're getting away from it, but creates these like toxic work environments where they're all consuming. And I feel like this is a perfect example of how when you create something like that, the movie will fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to have safety. You got to have safety, and you have to, and if your actors aren't safe, or then how can they do their best? We said they looked scared all the time. Yep, terrified. And like
real tears.
And like, this was made where they didn't have the rules and regulations, but people have lost their lives when they do have rules and regulations. Brandon Lee.
Exactly.
Brandon Lee, the prop gun shot him, killed him. Now we have, Baldwin facing the same thing where the prop gun killed somebody. I mean, safety first. You got to. I mean, these people's lives we're talking about. This isn't like, like a comedy this is tragic events that have happened in life.
And I think it's also tragic that big game is hunted in Africa for sport. Yeah. That is also horrific and tragic. So I don't want to I feel like I'm making a lot of fun of this movie, but I don't want to take away from that message because I do think it's the only redeeming part of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that they've made a lot more movies where it deals with the like conservation of Africa and the wildlife and stuff. This one could have been so much better. It had the meaning, like you said, it was a good meaning behind it, but just the guy didn't know what he was doing.
And that's the thing, like, I think this is where I hate studio notes. If you guys have listened to the podcast, I talk about this often, but I think with studio notes, you can't have a producer go from being an executive producer to being a director because you don't understand. I'm so sorry. You really don't. If we look at like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, we've just been talking about this movie a lot, so I'm going to bring it up. You can see Sam Raimi's direct vision, and then everything that feels off is a studio note. And you can tell that executive producers and Marvel was in there being like, you got to change this. You got to change this. We're funding it. You got to change this. You got to change this. And I think when you get that mindset as a producer, when it's time for you to make your own movie, you're like, oh, well, no one's going to tell me no. I'm backing this myself. And it's like, homeboy, you don't know how to make a movie.
Yeah. And it shows.
And it shows.
Yeah. It does.
It's actually, it's funny you mention that because like in the art world, it's such a big thing too. Yeah. Just the people funding it just don't, like, they have the business aspect of it, but like even let's just take schools, for example, like schools and art programs, like, you have business people funding that. You have, the leadership within a school, to be like a private school nowadays, because they've taken art classes almost out of every school. But, it's kind of the same thing there. They're just like, how many kids can we pump into a classroom? Just make them produce stuff. It's, like the business mindset is not the same as an artist mindset. And it really does make a difference when you try to merge the two of them together.
Exactly. And I think, just like speaking of this is a very off topic, but I think it shows that like there is no real creativity under capitalism. And because when you're under this like capitalist idea of like you have to make revenue and you have to produce and you have to do all these things, you're taking a lot of the art away from it. And this is why I think we'll never have art like we had during like the Renaissance era, where you just had patrons who were just like, I have so much money, make whatever you want.
Yeah. Yep.
And now you have, well, we need views, we need X amount of money, we need this by this time, and I think it's really killing a lot of creativity. Not saying that there's not new creatives, because there are, but I feel like have to work extra hard to break through that.
Yeah,
and I get it too. It's like I guess an easy thing to be to say would be like, all right, well, if you're going to have someone that involved with movies, and what is their film background? Maybe they should be doing a lot more with film, and really get a core understanding of what it means to be in film, and like what level does it take in school. But at the same time, like, one, how much of your life you have to spend on this? We're humans, and we we only have so much life to live. And then two, like, it does take a different mindset to be, to have this like business style mindset. And I think it's another thing just in the artist community in general is, like, artists can create, but it's kind of a reoccurring theme where a lot of artists just have difficulty with the business aspect of it. How do I charge for my work? How do I go and get this thing done? Even just something as simple as like keeping up with your finances, your expense reports, and everything else. It's just, it's a lot of work for one person to do. So will we ever see these two worlds come together, and what does that even look like?
What does it even look like? And I think if we're gonna, I would love to have you back on, Adam, so we could talk about some art world movies. I'd love to talk about Velvet Buzzsaw and then the new Candyman, if you ever have time, because I would love to talk about how those two films include the art world in a way that is destructive. So I think if we're on this train of thought, I think that would be fun for next time, because I have a lot to say that does not have to do with Roar.
yeah, understandable. I will say the man that made this, Marshall, his grand scheme was to show harmony between humans and big cats. And there is a scene where it's sort of a grand staircase, like the show we just talked about, where him and his friend are sitting on the grand staircase, and they're surrounded by this pride of lions. Like, they're going up the stairs, around both sides, and it's supposed to be like this beautiful shot where everybody's getting along and like harmony is in peace. But nothing ever goes the way you want in life. And he got hurt. He got ripped down the staircase, and it just shows you his concept was ripped down. His concept was ripped down.
And I think it also goes to show that, yes, you can live in harmony with big cats and with wildlife, but you can't do it in a controlled setting like a film, because then it's no longer their experience. You're trying to force them into your experience, which is unfair to them because they have no concept of that.
Right.
They're animals.
Right. And it's cute that he's riding on a skateboard, but the fact of the matter is he shouldn't be on a skateboard. He should be out in the wild. He's a wild animal.
Like you're gonna make a movie about conservationship, but then you're gonna import 150 lions. Like,
right.
It feels weird. Untrained.
And put them with people.
Yeah. It feels like point A and point B did not connect in any way.
No. Definitely not well thought of.
No, not at all.
So, anything else you'd like to add?
I'm good. Don't watch the movie. No. Literally watch anything else.
Watch the
trailer.
Yeah. Watch the documentaries, because those are good. I'd like to thank my wife, Kim, for pointing this movie out, because it was basically the most dangerous movie ever made, and she's 100% correct. It is a shit show. So thank you, hon. Love you.
Shout out, Kim.
Shout out, Kim. All right, so tune in next time to What's Happening.